I'll take care of some housekeeping stuff and wait a little bit more time for before we actually get started with the application, okay? So, that being said, we have called the meeting to order for the 15th, excuse me, the first October. Nothing but 15th here. And first thing we have to deal with is the minutes for May. As far as the approval goes. And you got a copy of the minutes?
I do not have a copy. No.
Well, how about if I give you this copy?
That's fine.
Well, wait a minute, I'm going to need both of them, perhaps two. Why don't you take this copy here? Yes, the next one?
Okay.
No,
Okay.
I've read them.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of minor changes. You ready? Halfway down the page, first paragraph to 605, continuation of ZBA case 1203. Chairman Plesser stated the last meeting on April 17th, the board insert the word still.
Board still?
Was still in a deliberative form,
Okay.
and discussion will not be open to the public at this time. And if we go 3/4 of the way down, that's 6 lines from the bottom, where it starts, Ms. Dawson made a suggestion that the board vote to make this letter public
Oh, okay, right.
as this, instead of this letter public, as this is an attorney-client communication.
Okay.
That's all I had. Do you have anything? Okay.
That's my highlights, no, that's understood.
You good with it?
Just a small correction.
What's that?
Page 2,
Uh-huh.
so section 1113 appeals. Appeals of Board of Adjustment, there's 1 in there.
Oh, yes. Instead of a T.
Oh,
That's it.
it's close. It's just supposed to be a T.
Yeah. Go on.
Anything further? You do? You have something further? Oh. Anything?
Move to accept the minutes of May 15th, 2012 as corrected.
You need the 17th? Wait a minute.
May 15th.
Okay.
I said May.
Oh, that was, yeah, okay, that was the previous meeting prior to that, okay. Yeah. 15th, May 15th. So I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, beyond that. Correspondence, all we have is a couple of magazines. Anybody's welcome to take them home. I've already got copies of all of them. Anybody interested? Get down and see.
Yep.
You want them, or?
You've got copies?
I've got copies.
Okay.
So there'll be a quiz next meeting.
Mm-hmm. Ready.
Okay, that being said, we're kind of down to the appeal at this time. Rather than open the appeal right away, I'm sorry, these gentlemen, here, the FOIA applications first. Now, we don't have a full board, we do have a quorum. You do have the option of continuing to the next meeting, which now would be in November. Or we can go with the quorum plus one here, but you will need 3 affirmative votes in order to get an approval. So I'll leave that decision up to you.
We'd like to move forward this evening.
Move forward, okay. Well, as long as she shows up, we'll just work with that. So if you want to go ahead and present your case at this time, be all yours.
Good evening, my name is Mark McLeod. I'm with the H.L. Turner Group in Concord, New Hampshire. And with me this evening is Jeff Foy of the Foy Insurance Agency. They're the property owners here. This is the property at 391 West Main Street in Tilton. What they're proposing to do is convert this residence into an insurance agency. They currently have one further up the street, and they're going to move that into this location. The reason we're here tonight is to request a variance in order to place some paved surfaces in the property setback, as well as some retaining walls that will be required to establish the parking areas and the driveway. Now, the existing property, there is a driveway coming in right here now within this setback, the eastern setback here, and it comes back to a paved area up in here. What Mr. Foy is proposing to do is to establish this as an entrance-only driveway and put parking here in the rear, and then create this exit-only driveway on the other side of the building. It provides better safety along the street. DOT has approved that, and it does provide a better sight distance because the road kind of comes up and turns around the corner here, separating that traffic and improving the sight distance here. There isn't a lot of site traffic here. It's mostly the few employees that he has there. Most of the business is done over the telephone and over the computer. There will be an occasional client that will come in and make use of the parking lot, and as well as mail trucks and delivery vehicles and that sort of thing will use this. Now, this is a marked up copy of what we submitted at a larger scale. And what this is doing is just to show where the existing impacts are already and where the new impacts are and where that overlap is. Now, in this area of blue here, that is where existing impacts to the setback are. Mostly pavement. This is that driveway right up that comes to here. And there was at one time a barn back here that was within the setback as well. And there's a retaining wall along this whole length of the rear eastern property line. Now, what we're proposing to do is to maintain this as a paved driveway here. You can see we're widening it a little bit for accessibility reasons and safety and maneuverability. And the parking lot itself, it widens out a little bit right here beyond where it had been. But the blue and yellow stripe here, both here and here, are areas where there had previously been a setback impact. And we're just duplicating that again here. And then the areas that are just yellow are strictly new impacts. And you can see we're extending this existing retaining wall a little bit right here, and Then we're adding a retaining wall here and here, which are really just due to the narrow dimensions of the property and our desire to maintain as much of the existing buffers, the trees that are there along those property lines as we can. Proposing to use the retaining walls is to maintain that privacy between the properties on either side.
How high is the retaining wall gonna be?
Less than 3 feet. It's a minimal grade change.
And the blue and yellow drawing up, is that already paved? I believe it is, isn't it?
Yes,
Some degree.
this right here is all paved already, and it will be,
You can upgrade it, I assume.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
And you can pave in the rear also. I
yes,
assume.
yes, there's, how many parts?
You're showing 3,080 square feet when it's finished of pavement?
Yes, that's correct.
And I assume you'll have entry and exit signage. Those
Yes,
areas, right?
yeah, oh, sure, yes.
Board have any other questions here so far?
Appears like there's a lot of shrubbery and screening and buffering along that western boundary, is that correct?
Yes, some has actually recently been added by the property owner to establish that. It was pretty open when he purchased the property. There was a couple of trees, but it wasn't very dense there. He has added some to help create more of a screen along there.
Once again, would you point to where the retaining wall is going to run to from,
Yes,
that you're gonna put in?
yes, there's going to be one right here in this length. This blue line right here is an existing retaining wall, and we're extending it this distance. I would say it's approximately 15 feet. And then, well, the total is 65 new linear feet of retaining wall. And the other area is right here, and then this section right here, where it kind of overlaps into that blue. There will be a retaining wall right there as well, in those 3 locations.
Okay, so it's not like something running all the way out to the street is what I'm getting at.
No, it's the property's sloping back this way, and so to establish this parking lot back here, there is some slope cutting and to help minimize that disturbance along the sides there. Retaining wall was the best way to accomplish that.
Part of it too is what the barn that used to be back here, the foundation kind of served as a retaining wall. But when we took the barn down came the foundation wall as well. So almost like if we just sort of cut off the foundation and left it, that's about what we're replacing. So just trying to keep that slope back, that's all.
Mm-hmm. So pretty much all the vegetation and things of that nature are gonna be left there. As,
Yeah, yeah,
undisturbed.
right. I mean, I've cleaned up some stuff, there was some stuff that had fallen down or was about to fall down, or that kind of thing, but other than that, my goal was to leave as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, the barn came pretty close, so we're not looking to extend anything beyond that. I mean, there will be some trimming along this edge, cutting back a little bit to get to there, but we're not cutting it completely. You know, we're leaving more than we're cutting, so.
Mm-hmm.
Any kind of lighting?
There'll be, because the business isn't occupied at night, really the only lighting back here, there'll be a building mounted light in the rear that will, illuminate the walkway things. If an employee's working late, he or she would be able to have visibility out to the parking lot, but there are no night hours, so for that reason, there is no parking lot lighting over there. What's not in the building.
What I did in another building that worked really well was we mounted it's a fairly vibrant light, but you mount it on an egg timer. So, if you're going to leave and, you want 5 minutes of light, you just crank it to 5 minutes, go out, you know, clean your car off or whatever, and then it just automatically shuts off, which it really does accomplish what it is that we need for the least amount of electrical usage and light.
The pavement on the driveway on the west side there, you're not showing the whole thing in yellow. Are you gonna pave that whole thing or not?
Yes, I was just highlighting where it's impacting the buffer zone.
Yeah.
This is outside of the buffer,
Oh, I see.
right
what you-
here,
okay.
that's what, yes, the whole driveway and the parking lot will be paved. I just wanted to highlight where the buffer impact, the setback impact was.
Okay, I probably didn't know. Anybody have any further questions? Or should we move into the criteria?
I think so, yeah, we could.
I think we're good with questions at the moment. We'd like you to address the criteria for a variance. That is necessary for the variance. Work off your own application if you want, and we'll work up any questions as we proceed through that.
Okay.
Okay?
See if I can, Essentially, and I can almost do it from memory, I was the one that completed the application. When I bought the property, and one of the things that always concerned me, especially being an insurance agent, is the safety of people that come to my property and leave my property. And when you're at the existing driveway and you look to make a left-hand turn, you know, you're staring uphill. There's a bit of a sort of bump out on my neighbor's property, just the sort of the way the property works, and so your visibility to your left is tough. And then people are coming downhill around that corner, and might I say that some people are going a bit more than the speed limit allows for. So you know, you notice quickly that, you know, there are going to be some close calls there. There's also a curb cut across the street where people are pulling in and out of fairly frequently as well. I think it's maybe an apartment complex or something. I don't know exactly, but nevertheless, it really it bothered me being there for a bit of time. And then if we were also adding people coming in and out at the same time, now we're really bringing into some safety concerns. And again, I'm in the insurance business. I mean, there would be nothing worse than to have one of my clients come to take out a policy or pay a bill or whatever, and then leave and get in an accident as they're leaving my own building. So so then you were saying, well, maybe we could widen this, but that didn't really work well. So I started talking to the people at H.L. Turner, and then also the people at the DOT, saying, you know, if we're down here, now we've got a much better view to the left, and we can make much more of a safer exit than if we were trying to come in and out of the same one. So the lot constraints are what they are. It's only so big of a lot, and so in order to accomplish those goals, we got the approval of the DOT, and so that's why we're here today.
Mm-hmm. I can fully appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, but I still need for you to go over the criteria itself.
Okay.
As required for a variance.
All right.
Do you have a copy of the zoning application we submitted? I'd like to
Hold on.
bring that up. I know what they're talking about.
Yep. No, I do as well.
You can use mine if you'd like.
If you don't mind? Okay, thank you.
Save you some time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Apologize for
You're right there on the top of
Right. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Good to see you.
Granting the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. My argument for that was that since this is a mixed-use district created to allow small-scale retail and service alongside residential properties, and what this variance will do is allow the conversion of an existing residential property into a small-scale commercial usage, without really changing or negatively impacting the character of that neighborhood.
Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, go on.
All right. Item 2, if the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed, because this variance will permit the modification of this property to a commercial usage in a district whose purpose is to foster small-scale commercial enterprises. The variance will establish an exit point for vehicles that is safer than what is permitted by the existing driveway on the property, and it will minimize unnecessary disturbances along the property lines to the vegetation there. And that is through the retaining walls. You know, the purpose behind them is to minimize disturbances to that existing vegetation. The pavement itself, you know, the largest new impact for the pavement is along this western property line. And that impact is there. The reason for that is to create this exit driveway, to create a safer traffic pattern on this property than currently exists.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Okay.
Are you with that? You good with that? You good?
Yep.
Okay. Granting the variance would do substantial justice because the variance, or this variance, will allow, as stated, for the establishment of commercial usage that is attentive to the needs of its employees, customers, and neighbors. By attentive to those needs, what I was getting at is that it creates safer usage for the employees who will be there daily, customers that will be coming there from time to time, and it is maintaining to the greatest extent possible the privacy of the neighbors through maintaining the vegetative buffer along those property lines.
Are you all right?
I'm good, I'm okay.
Are you good?
Thank you.
Okay, move on.
Okay? If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished because the proposed development by Foy Insurance will create a commercial office building in a district where such a use is permitted. Granting the variance will establish an ancillary space supporting the functioning of the business, and by that I'm referring to the parking, employee/customer parking, and the circulation space to utilize that parking area. The facility will operate during traditional business hours, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and will not engage in nor support activities that would be construed as detrimental to abutting properties or the neighborhood in general. Because it's, you know, just a typical small office, regular hours, you know, not an undue amount of traffic in or out. You know, the type of business that it is, the employees that are there, once they're there, they'll be there most of the day and then leave in the evening, you know, much as a lot of the residences or the other small businesses are.
What about office parties?
We'll send you an invitation.
They have a shuttle bus for those.
Okay, so really good with that?
Yeah, that's good.
Continue.
And number 5, unnecessary hardship. Owing to a special condition of the property that distinguishes it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in an unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to this property, because in a visual assessment of the properties in this neighborhood revealed that many have been developed in the past in a manner that is non-compliant with these current regulations in terms of pavement and other things in the setback. This property already contains pavement and retaining wall structures located within that setback, as well as the accessory barn that the applicant has already raised was a violation of that ordinance as well. The impacts that we are proposing have been designed to overlap and take advantage of the existing impacts that are, non-compliant impacts that are there. The lot itself is relatively narrow, and it tapers as it heads toward the rear. So when the property line setbacks are applied, there's little space available for additional development or improvements. And as stated previously, the purpose of the retaining walls in these setbacks is to protect existing buffers and minimize impacts to neighboring properties. And the purpose of the parking lot in the rear of the building, where we've proposed it, is to minimize the visual impact in the neighborhood, to keep that residential character of the property from the street. And the additional pavement here, the new traffic circulation is proposed and designed with safety of employees and customers, as well as the general public traveling on Route 3. With all those factors in mind. The proposed use is a reasonable one because in addition to renovating and maintaining an existing structure, this facility will create a small-scale commercial office building, which is a permitted usage in this district. Because of the compact dimensions of this lot, some minor encroachments of pavement and retaining walls into the property line setback are required to develop the full functionality of this usage and to protect the abutting properties. And in the ways that I believe I've outlined in the preceding 4 items. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That little plateau that you're creating in the back,
Yes.
will that just be left to grow naturally?
Well, right
It's
here
about
is,
40 feet, right, to the property line?
oh, back in here?
Uh-huh.
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be reseeded and it's going to be left in a natural state.
Yep.
I for one, I visually take note of the property within the last week, and I know exactly what you're getting at as far as it being very narrow, and the other properties in the general area, they already are in their setbacks with their driveways, so I mean, this is, it's a perfectly normal thing, and I can see where the upgrading of the property has far greater value to the immediate area than just leaving it like it was, if you will.
Definitely a well thought out upgrade.
Yes, yeah, I
No doubt about it.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that.
totally agree with that. So, board, got any other questions? If not, then I'll open it up for public comment at this time for all those initially in favor.
I just came to see what they were doing. I'm the neighbor on the other side of the
West side,
property
right.
knows, and I think they're doing a nice job, and we're glad to have them there because they won't be there on nights and weekends, and I think they're doing a good idea to upgrade it like this. So.
You definitely feel it'd be a,
Oh, yeah, and actually,
Advantage.
the original deed, that property deed came out of the property that we own, and it really called for a fence to be built along the entire boundary, which apparently never happened. That was one of their criteria in the original deed. But all they did was built that retaining wall in the northern, part of it, and you have a hard time finding it in some places because it's covered up with dirt. But I think I understand better now, having seen this, why the second driveway. I didn't really, I could see that that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
They'll be lucky too because they'll be coming out on the western side of the people that are taking the left into the housing development.
mm-hmm. That was the way I was observing it when I went by it the other day. Any other comments relative to the issue at hand? Seeing none, I guess we'll close it to public sentiment, bring back to the board. Why don't you, what do you do with it?
Well, they dealt with DOT, outside of the normal inspection and so forth, you know, that would be required under conditions. I don't have any problem with
We'll put inspecting done.
just whatever, you know, whatever conditions.
Well, the
required.
conditions for the planning board, is that what you're getting at?
No, any that we might impose. And I can't think of any really that is that significant or warranted even.
I totally agree with you.
That's great, yeah.
Do you have anything,
No, I like it.
I think we
what
should.
what do you think of it?
I think it's a great idea to put that second driveway in.
Yeah,
I used to
agree.
live, I
Yeah.
used to live a couple houses down when I was
The well
much
within their,
younger. And that area really stinks to get in and out of. So that
within their
second driveway is
percentages
great.
of impervious surfaces, all that, so drainage has been done. Yeah,
Okay,
I think we should move forward.
okay, in that case, I'll entertain a motion.
All right. Having considered the facts, plan and testimony presented, I move that we grant the variance requested in case number ZBA 12-05.
And we get a couple of reasons for that. Like the safety aspect of having the separate driveways. And the fact that it would upgrade the general vicinity of the area.
Those are excellent modifications to the motion that I will definitely accept, yes.
What were they again? What were they again, Joe?
Okay, the safety of the extra driveway coming out of the west side. Being,
Safety for
for all intents and purposes, I personally feel it is necessary for them to have that other driveway, because when you have someone leaving the property and someone wants to come in, you're gonna have a direct conflict if you don't have that second driveway.
Absolutely.
It's not like they've got a big parking lot in the back to be reversing direction and everything in order to come and go from the property.
So there's definitely added safety involved there. Yeah.
And in general, the whole upgrading of the property, which of course goes along with the driveway, if you didn't allow the driveway, to me, the property would just remain in its past state and be a negative effect on the area continually. So just to add those two issues as far as reasons why we might want to consider an approval on this variance. You good with that?
Accepted, absolutely.
Okay, so we have a motion. We're looking for a second. We have a second. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nobody left. You're good to go, sir.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for sharing that application as well.
You're welcome.
Not sure I would have found it this on paper.
My pleasure.
Thanks. Thanks. Great to meet you. Thanks. Good luck, guys.
Good luck.
Dan,
Oh,
oh, we can get started. Yeah, well,
Tripod, that.
I don't know.
I have a board in my office,
Okay.
John. We left you last
Yeah.
week.
The easel?
Yeah, the easel, tripod.
Easy.
He calls it a tripod.
You make it?
Oh,
An antique.
I heard there's a couple upstairs.
Well, that was an antique.
I know.
left uncovered.
Replaced by another use. Changing the stuff on. But I'm trying to think long term. It's gonna be great for that. Trying to get a little small
You know, maybe we'll put that together about 13 years ago. No, I put the safety strap on the bottom there, it's actually supposed to go over top. Hook on the outside.
That's the hour of operation. Everybody's leaving. Quiet. Weekends. It's a good deal.
Do you have to put a shot?
You know, gentlemen, before you get started, you notice you're getting all that stuff set up. The same option is available to you that was available to the other party
Which option was that?
to continue till November, because we don't have a full board here. Okay?
Feeling lucky tonight, isn't it?
Isn't that what Clint Eastwood said?
Oh,
I always draw a crowd.
Okay.
I think we know when to get into that.
Personality.
Oh, God.
Sweetie.
Oh, thank you, dear.
What to do. Okay?
Okay, sure.
I don't know what to
Sort of
say.
kill a little time. Anyway. I can't see up from here.
I can't see it from where I was standing.
Give you two different ones, didn't I?
Yeah, there you go, now it stands out. Oh, there she is. By golly, we're gonna have a full board for you after all.
Tried.
I'm glad to see you can make it anyway.
You're welcome to join us, we should not have a place to see.
This is not student office.
This kind of abuse, right?
I withdraw the option.
All right,
to-
thanks.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Did you try to call?
Yeah, I couldn't get to
the
Oh,
If you'd like to look at those. I can look at
everyone.
them.
yeah.
Oh, I did that on the
Working in the office.
I took care of the first one.
I talked to them
Oh.
outside.
Yes. Settled in, we'll go ahead and we'll start on the next case. 745. And our next case would be the ZBA case 12-07, Haven Grove seeking appeal from an administrative decision by the planning board that a retaining wall is an accessory parking and the driveway is not allowed in the setback under the exception that allows 10% of the setback to be used for an accessory use. Article 2, Section 2.1, Article 7, Table of Dimensional Values, Note 2. Properties located 7 Grange Road, Tilton, mixed-use district, tax map R9, lot 55. Hi, gentlemen.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Nix. I'm an attorney representing Haven Grove. John Bernard is here tonight. Just in way of background, if I can read this a little bit. It's going to end up on the floor. This is the property where the chiropractor is next to the senior center at the intersection of Grange Road and US Route 3. The property was just conditionally approved for a site plan as it's laid out, with the exception of the small retaining wall that's located in this highlighted area right here. And the planning board approved it without the retaining wall and highly suggested that we come to the ZBA to either appeal the administrative decision that the retaining wall is not allowed or to get the variance. So the next, if you don't approve the first one, then the next one we would ask for variance for. But this particular retaining wall is only a couple of feet tall, and it's there because of the difference in the elevation between the highway and the parking area up here. This being the appeal of administrative decision, what we are appealing is that the planning board's interpretation that you can't have a retaining wall in a setback that's associated with a parking area. And if you recall, several months ago we came before the zoning board and with the appeal of whether parking was allowed in the setback as an accessory use. And the zoning board had made the determination that the parking was allowed. And the Haven Groves believes that the intent of the ordinance is to allow the parking area to include what's necessary for the parking itself. And I'm making reference to a letter which Attorney Crean had submitted to the zoning board. It was back in May of 2012. That was, the board took the vote to release its attorney-client privilege on it, and so the letter has been circulated. And in that, Attorney Crean references Rathkoff on the law of zoning and planning, and it says, and this is on, if you have that letter, this is on page 4. It says, where an ordinance imposes yard requirements in terms of open unoccupied space on the same lot with a main building, a property owner may nevertheless usually require yard space for parking of motor vehicles. And that's the part we were talking about before. But the last clause says, and may improve it for that purpose. And so we're reading the same information that was used to allow the construction of these retaining walls within the setback for the purposes of parking. Again, and this is the way that this ordinance has been interpreted sort of over time in different places in town. Actually, Mr. Bernard's car dealership has retaining walls that were on the plan and approved as part of the parking on that. So we also have the administrative gloss argument, but we believe that the same theory that Attorney Crean used regarding the parking goes with the retaining wall as well. And with that, we would request that the zoning board interpret the zoning ordinance to allow these retaining walls in the setback with the parking. Or I should say, as a necessary part of the parking itself.
I hear what you're saying, but I do have a problem. Okay, because to me, the definition does talk about structures. And that's a definitive statement, the way I would see it. And I'm not so sure that that decision was really a decision made by the planning board. Their decision was really to suggest to you that you seek a variance and that to try and overturn something that is already quite specific in the ordinance seems a little bit out of place, in my view, at this point in time. I ask the other board members their particular opinions also, but it just seems to me like a variance is more the way to go with this, so as not to complicate what already is in existence in the ordinance.
Well, again, the planning board suggested the variance, but when we looked at this and really analyzed what was going on, historically and with the ordinance, we wanted to bring this appeal administrative decision forward because we believe that the ordinance, the intent of the ordinance was to allow these really accessory structures. And
with the pavement, I agree with you, but not, the retaining wall is something in addition to that, in my view. You want to throw something in?
Yeah, I guess
Sure,
it's my
sure.
nickel, so I'm gonna go for it. I think this, in my opinion, how this regulation has been interpreted for structures was buildings, and it's been that way for quite a long time, as long as I've been doing business in this town for over 30 years now, I guess it is. What really starts to stand out at me is as I drive here, and
wait for the tape.
So what really starts to bother me is when I drive here and I see someone putting in a couple of stairs, granite stairs. Any one of you wanted to put it into your house, you wanted to make a walkway up to your house. Now it requires someone to come to the ZBA to do it. That's a structure. And I don't believe that that was the spirit and the intent of the regulation at any one time. I believe the spirit and the intent of it was for someone to build something in it. And then the regulations go on to say, well, if you are going to build something in it, you can only build it in 10% if it's an accessory. During the process that I've been here, they've taken this meaning.
Accessory buildings now.
Right, accessory building. What I think has happened here, and we've taken this one word, and because it wasn't, it's rather vague as it's in the
When you say the one word, you mean the definition?
structure.
The definition of structure. That's where this whole thing.
Structure,
The
the
definition
one
of
word.
setback, which talks about structure.
Structure.
Yeah.
This is what it is. And I really believe when that was put in there, what a structure was intended for was for buildings. That's where it was. Now it has been, if you want to put a granite stop into your driveway, or into your house, and you're in that setback, you want a walkway through a gate where you'll see throughout the whole town here, you now need to go to the ZBA for it. That's where I have an issue with it. Either way, everybody wants this will probably be passed through, but I don't believe that was the spirit and intent. Steve, you're going to have to run with this one from here, but that's what I had to say on
In response to what you're saying, and I understand where you're coming from. Having been here in the office for many years, I mean,
Yes, you do.
this really never came up. However, we can't deny what is in the ordinance and how the planning board wishes to interpret it has a value. And I really don't want to step on that, in my view, when a variance will resolve the problem if it can be shown to be necessary.
Well, I think we should also look at the definition of a building, which says any enclosure for shelter or support of persons, animals, chattels, or property of any kind. So if this retaining wall is supporting any property of any kind, then it too is a building, and it's an accessory building to the main use, which is allowed in the setback. 10% of it is. So I think we have to look at the definition of building as well.
Absolutely.
In the term structure, the problem area?
It is. That's the problem area.
But, well, the way this ordinance is written is that you have the term structure, which sort of covers everything in the world, and then
That's all, yeah.
well, we can all laugh. but then it narrows with using the word building, and if you have something that's supporting something, property of any kind, That's what it says. If it's supporting property of any kind, which the retaining wall is, then the retaining wall becomes a building. It's, the definition of a building is not limited to having a roof on it.
We could play this game all night long.
I'm looking for some more input here rather than
I don't know,
just.
I tend to agree with Mr. B that, you know, probably most likely the original intent of the word, use of the word structure was something that rose above ground that would create an eyesore or some other issue, a problem, visibility problem, something like that for the abutting neighbors. But to be used as a means for preventing erosion or improving safety, I'm not so sure that that was the original intent. But I don't know. Like I said, it's difficult for us to know what the original intent is at this particular time.
Well, I noticed that Mr. Bernard went into the spirit of the ordinance. The spirit of the ordinance really reflects back into variance criteria, not necessarily into appeal of administrative decision, in my view. I mean, it's almost like you're trying to use the same criteria, then why not be in the variance area to begin with?
I feel like we're just going to be spinning our wheels all evening on it if we belabor this, because I'd rather just go right into the variance process. In fact, you know, they've made their determination, the planning board has given their own definition of what's going on here, and we can live with it, work with it.
Okay, just saying. Anybody else got anything you put into at this point? In case, I'll open it up to the public this time. Dan?
Dan Crean, attorney for the town, and I've been asked to be here for the zoning board.
Can I just raise a question here? Who are you actually here for?
Advising the zoning board.
Advising us. Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Just as a matter of technicality, and I don't think anybody really objects to it because there's been at least seen the action notice, but a copy of the administrative appeal was not filed with the planning board to my knowledge, and under the statute it should have been as the entity from whom the appeal was taken. But, you know, I think the planning board has received notice when the appeal was filed, but technically there should have been an appeal filed. Since Attorney Nix mentioned my memo to the board earlier regarding parking, and he cited Rathkoff, which is a well-known legal encyclopedia about land use. Taking something a bit out of context is because Rathkoff precedes all of that by saying, unless specifically regulated in the ordinance, these things are, so that the real regulation that you go by is not what Rathkoff says, what might be the rule in general, it's what your ordinance says. And I think, you know, it's interesting to hear an argument that structure and building mean the same thing. If structure and building meant the same thing, we'd have one term used in the ordinance. So I think it's clear that there is a difference in meaning between structure and building. If it was designed so that structure meant building, building meant structure, we'd have one term, or they'd be defined the same way, which they aren't. So I think there is a difference between structure and building, and I don't, you know, I just don't think that that argument is persuasive, at least not to me.
It'd be kind of like considering a jungle gym a structure, well, but it's not a building.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, I looked into New Hampshire case law, trying to find whether or not the Supreme Court in New Hampshire had ever actually defined whether or not a retaining wall was considered a structure. The closest case that I found was a 1995 case, ABC Builders versus American Mutual Insurance Company, 139 New Hampshire 745. And that wasn't even a case about zoning, it was a case about insurance. But the court mentions that the issue is a retaining wall encroached by 35 feet and approximately 33 feet of the residence was in violation of the 25-foot setback requirement. So at least in that case, the Supreme Court talked about a retaining wall as having to meet the setback requirements. Again, we don't have the exact language of the ordinance, but I think that's at least some indication that the Supreme Court doesn't treats a retaining wall as a structure that's subject to setback requirements. So I think that when you look at the ordinance as a whole, the ordinance does distinguish between setbacks and buildings. Setback is broadly defined. Maybe at some point there ought to be clarification done, but that's through the zoning amendment process, not through reinterpretation at this point of the zoning, in my view.
Okay, I understand perfectly what you're saying. Mrs. Plusner?
No, I just wanted to say that when the board heard Mr. Bernard's case, that they were very supportive of the idea of why he wanted a retaining wall in that location.
Yeah.
But with everything that has gone on, the board felt they had no authority to go against what the zoning regulations were saying, and we highly encouraged him to come and try for a variance because we felt he would have a case for that variance, and that we even offered, if he wanted us to, that we would send a letter of recommendation. And I'm here to tell you that you did get a copy of the minutes, and we were very much in favor of what it was he wanted to do and why he wanted to do it.
Thank you.
The board certification. Would you like me to read the, some of the minutes the planning board had?
My suggestion is
Sure.
to wait until the variance to read that.
And I was just getting at the case for the variance as opposed to,
Okay.
He's saying we're not at the variance stage.
no, I know we're not. We're
I'm sorry, go
trying to
ahead.
decide whether we're gonna go there or not. That's,
Okay,
that's what
cool.
the appeal is all about. And,
Sorry.
The Attorney Green explained the planning board will have to make this decision, but when you read the zoning ordinance, and this is kind of reiterating what he just said, it says no structures are allowed in the setbacks, which is what I said also before. Structure defined as anything constructed. A retaining wall is constructed and will need a variance. The chairman, planning board chairman, closed public session, but she feels there is still the issue of having a structure in setbacks. Mr. Bernard feels the parking could be built without the retaining walls there, but having them would make it better. And Mr. Benson agreed. Appearance of the 2-foot retaining wall is a great idea, but it's a question for ZBA to decide with a variance. So, that hasn't been talked to.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry?
if I may,
Oh,
can I just
yes,
respond?
by all means, yes, go ahead.
Um,
Oh, just a second. Are we done with the public? Pro and con? Okay, we're close to the public, and you have the floor again.
And I'll just remain seated, and I'll just be informal.
All right.
Okay, regarding the argument that I was saying that the definition of structure and building was the same, that is not what I was saying, and I apologize if I didn't get that right, but what I was saying is that all buildings are structures under the definition, but not all structures are buildings. And if you read the two definitions, they are different. They are not the same. But so if you first read to see whether it is a structure, which under the very broad definition, it would fall under the definition of a structure. But then in order to see whether the retaining wall falls into the 10% exclusion under an accessory building, you have to look at the definition of building, which is the definition that says it's anything that would support property, which is where the retaining wall definition comes in. And so I wasn't saying that the two terms are equal. They're definitely not. definitely not. And the exclusion for the 10% is for accessory buildings. And that's why we're asking, and really what we're doing is asking the board to review the ordinance, because as you know, I mean, you're sort of the judges here, with all due respect to the planning board. That's why we're here, is to ask you to look at this with a new set of eyes to see whether these retaining walls are in fact buildings that meet the 10%. The issue of the court talking about another retaining wall in another town is really, you can't apply that here at all, because we're talking about the Tilton zoning ordinance and how that applies. Okay, so you got that. I think that covers it. The intent of the administrative appeal is to ask the zoning board to take a fresh look at the ordinance, with all due respect to the planning board, and because we believe that it should be interpreted to allow these. Thank you.
I guess it's our last chance to say something here, so what I would like to say is that, can you please explain to me how, if someone wanted to put in a walkway to their house, and they wanted to put in a couple granites, that would make sense that they'd have to come in front of the ZBA, because under the interpretation that anything that you do, or any kind of structure, you'd have to come in here for a variance.
You're saying like if it went
A
through,
walkway, if I have a
if it went through
walkway,
the setback in order to get to the house, is that what you're saying?
if I own a house and I want to put a walkway in, I want to put 2 granite steps to come up, as I've noticed many of them here, and you wanted to put concrete down, as many of them have, would I need to come in for a ZBA? Would I have to come into the ZBA? It's within the 20-foot setback, it is a structure, it's 2 granite steps, and a paved walkway, because that's essentially how I see it, what we're talking about.
I don't completely disagree with you, but what I do fall back on is whether I like it or not, or whether you like it or not, the ordinance is what the ordinance is. Okay, and that to me is really the issue here. And to address the issue in a way to waive it, if you will, as what we think it should be, when really the change should come from the planning board and the zoning change to clarify these issues. But in my opinion, as of this point in time, it looks like we should go for a variance.
I totally understand what you're saying, and for the last 30 years, since you and I have been in business, and someone wanted to put in 2 granite steps, and wanted to put in a light post with a light bulb on it, there was never someone who said, you know...
There was...
Sorry, we might need to stop at this point, Steve, is that what you're trying to tell me? That's why I paid him the big bucks. Yeah, right. Okay.
My headache is getting worse. He's right.
I think there is one,
Reopen it up to the...
there is one distinction, I think, in that a retaining wall is constructed where a walkway can be placed. And there is a difference.
Another terminology.
I mean,
This is why I think really we should be doing a variance thing rather than this whole, it just seems like, to me, the variance is, until they get the ordinance changed to say what it reasonably should say, that it would be a variance thing. In fact, I did open it up to the public. Did you have something else you wanted to add?
No, I don't
No.
have anything else.
Okay, then close it down to the public. Back to the board. Do we want to entertain administrative, going down the path of administrative appeal, or do we want to go down the path of a variance?
I move that we abandon the appeal for administrative decision and move on to the request for our appeal for variance.
Second.
You have a second. Any further discussion? Oh, yes, we should change the word, not to abandon, but to deny.
Oh, sure, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Good catch.
That was a good catch.
We knew what he was thinking, that's
Corrected.
what it said. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let's do the variance.
You amended, you got that amendment?
Amendment?
Move to
Denial?
deny the appeal.
No,
from this-
amendment to the motion, to deny, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
okay.
You want me to just move forward with it?
Sure.
Okay. My name is, for the record, my name is Stephen Nixon. They train us pretty well on that one. We're here for a variance for the construction of a retaining wall on the Haven Grove property located on the corner of Route 3 and Grange Road. The retaining wall in question I have highlighted on the plan before the board, and it is along parking lots, parking spaces number 6 through 11. This is approximately a 2-foot tall retaining wall, and what it does is allow a flat parking surface because of the change in grade out here, and it would be a block retaining wall, right, John? Correct. Yeah. And the just give me a second. The variance will not be contrary to the public interest, because the purpose of the setbacks are to allow adequate open space for visibility, for fire protection, and to control density throughout the area. In this particular case, visibility is not a problem. It would actually probably improve visibility a little bit between Grange Road. It is not a visual detriment to, or will not be a visual detriment to any of the abutters that can see it, because there's already a development in this area. It's a little bit difficult to see through here because of all the utilities that are out here, and the retaining wall is only going to be about 2 feet tall, so when you're looking at it, you're going to look right over the top of it.
Okay, I have a question before you continue with the criteria. The wall itself, if that wall weren't there, would people be able to drive straight out on Route 3?
No, no, there would.
There's enough of a ravine to withstand
Yeah,
them?
there would be, what we're trying to avoid is having a cut that comes down that would have to be either lawn or landscaped or something, you know, to hold the cut back.
So without vehicles could theoretically, especially in the
Four-wheel drive,
wintertime,
1 foot.
go over the edge and be in the
So-
ravine?
So it's
Oh,
for-
well, yeah, I mean, that could happen, yeah.
Is it for erosion control?
Well, it's for a number of reasons, so you don't have to do as much cutting, and erosion control is one reason, because you're gonna end up with one of these 1-to-1 deals coming down for, you know, a couple of feet. And if you put the wall in, it eliminates that. And it allows the parking area to be flatter.
All right, and that's gonna be paved in there too.
That's
So
correct.
you need something to support what's underneath the
What's on
pavement.
it,
Sure.
Right.
Correct. The variance is in the spirit of the ordinance, and I think, again, not contrary to the public interest and spirit of the ordinance are sort of both combined. So what we just talked about 2 minutes ago are really the same reasons that we're talking about here for lessening congestion and erosion control. Substantial justice will be done, and this is the test where you weigh any loss to the individual should not be outweighed by a gain to the general public. That would be an injustice. There's really no benefit to the general public by doing this, or there's really no loss to the general public either. There would be a loss to the individual lot owner because we have that cut slope there. It would be a maintenance problem, erosion problem, and it wouldn't look as nice, which is an abutter issue as well. The surrounding property values will not be diminished. Again, this will be hardly visible at all, and if it is visible, it will make it look better versus a steep bank that is difficult to mow and cut. And anytime you have a property that looks better, it has a tendency to rise everybody's property values. Literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties. Again, this property is, it's sort of triangular in shape, which makes it very unique. It has two has two highways on, well, let's say it has the main highway on one side and Grange Road on the other. We won't call Grange Road a highway, which creates a unique situation out here, especially for setback issues. And there's also a situation where the grade of the highway is different than the grade of the lot, and that's where this retaining wall comes in. So that's what we're dealing with as far as a special condition of the property. And there's really no fair and substantial relationship that exists between the general purpose of the ordinance and how it's applied here. And this goes to the building or structures in the setback issue. In the zoning, or excuse me, in the variance world where we are right now, there's no real benefit of applying this particular ordinance provision to this application. It just doesn't make sense. And that the proposed use is a reasonable one. Again, we've had a little discussion here about the purposes behind having the retaining wall and the fact that it's only going to be a couple feet tall, which is very reasonable. And I don't really need to go to the second test on hardship, because I believe we've met it on the first test, unless the board finds otherwise, in which case, if the board doesn't find otherwise, I would revisit that. But with that, I'll take some questions.
On the application, Attorney Nick said, he's using the word the plural for wall and I'm wondering why you're only addressing lots, parking areas 1 through 7. Are you not dealing with the retaining wall on the east end of the property as well, the tall one?
The retaining
11
wall.
through 17.
The retaining wall over here
It's pre-existing.
was pre-existing, right? And
Okay.
that's
Is that constructed to? I noticed you're going to park right up to the retaining wall. I'm very familiar with Allen block construction, and I know how it has to be put in for parking, to support parking. Was it originally built to support parking, or just?
Absolutely, that's geogrid in it, and that's the length of the geogrid you do it and how many blocks up you do it. It is.
And what's the angle, 12 degrees?
Yeah, that one is, I believe so. They come in what, 7 and 12, and it just depends on how much geogrid you have to put in depending on.
Okay. So it was built to
Yeah, it was.
support vehicular parking?
I have no idea what he's talking
Okay. Yeah, because I have an Allen block retaining wall.
I have pictures of miles of the stuff that I've built.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
it's,
I know you've built a lot
I've
of it.
built a lot. I was just looking at them.
Yeah, it's great stuff, but
I mean, these are some retaining walls that have been built out of this stuff. It's just kind of, it's amazing. It's,
yeah,
it feels still.
it's great stuff. Okay.
Continue.
So
I just happen to have pictures of this subject.
that was constructed without variance
Yeah,
originally,
the nice
correct?
walls.
That's correct.
Okay. Water over the dam. Yeah, I remember when it was constructed, but I wasn't on any boards at the time.
I can take you around this town and show you where they're constructed within the 20-foot setback. If I want to take a ride, that's what I'm
Planning
required
board's
to
gonna be
do.
addressing that.
How are you all?
You're lucky you have him.
I know. I'm so grateful.
He's earned his keep.
Yes, I have. Notice that.
Allegedly.
Okay, so that's the reason why we're not addressing the east end.
Yes.
We're really addressing one wall, and that's the 2-foot
The
one.
new.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to clarify that.
With the good, out with the bad.
I was, just looking for that, thing from the DOT. Is that it there?
I think it is, right?
That's why I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
When you said it's gonna be 2 foot high, that's gonna be 2 foot above the surface of the pavement?
Yes.
Was that your intention?
Yes.
Actually, it's gonna have foundation and everything else,
Yeah, they're down in the ground a couple of feet too.
Yeah.
And then you have a base below that, and you compact the base, and then you put a couple of layers below. It's how they're designed, it's how they're built, and then they walk into each other. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a new type of one coming out too that, I don't know, everybody thinks it's a new thing, but it would be that same type of structure, same type, there's an Allen block and there's a Versalock. And depending on what engineer you talk to, tell you which one's better. I think they get a kickback or something, I don't know, but there's 2 different types out there, but both essentially do the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it'll be set up so that, now, the chairman asked you if the wall was going to be above the grade of the parking lot.
It is.
Are the vehicles gonna be banging into that using it as a stop?
They would bang into it if they drove into it, yes.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, that was a little concern, you know, would they dislodge the blocks eventually and destroy the upper layer that's above?
You know,
Or is there any way?
I just have practical experience with them, and I can say in front of one of Squamato recently, after it's been there for 10 years, a delivery truck came in and ran into it.
Yeah, I saw that some of them had loosened
So-
along the wall, that's why I'm asking.
Right, so I tore it apart and I put it right back together and back to the same condition it was in. They're really very forgiving blocks, and the other thing what they really allow to do is they allow water to drain down through them.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And they're really a wonderful invention, but I don't know where.
They are, I agree with you 100%. But I was just wondering if you were going to use any additional curbing behind those for their wheels to bump up against, to keep them away from the wall itself.
I don't intend to at this time. I think the visual aid will be pretty daunting for somebody to run into it. It'd almost be like saying, for example, down here, we have a guardrail down here. And it's the same thing. Visually, they can just run right into that guardrail if they wanted to. So it's just be a visual
Yeah,
stop.
it's pretty critical down there, it's a high wall.
Yeah, right.
I
Yeah.
But it's gonna, nothing being different than we have right up here in the parking lot where they've got the steel barriers there. You could run into
Okay.
those too.
I have.
So they-
I have.
if they damage your car,
Just tap it.
But it's certainly gonna be easier to deal with because they just bounce off of that rather than trying to back out of that ditch.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I don't have any other questions.
All right? Okay, nothing further being set up here at this time, therefore I'll open it to the public. All those in favor, speak up. All those opposed? Those who don't care.
I just have a question. Can I just ask a question, doesn't matter whether I'm in favor or against? Okay.
That's right, qualify under
Thank you.
either condition.
I was just wondering what the right-of-way was on Route 3 to the existing, what would be the existing retaining wall?
Well,
What the distance away from it would be?
We have a letter from DOT
Okay.
that specifically states that they have no problem with what this proposal is. Email from Bill Rollins, District 3. Based on the attached plan, parking in the state right-of-way is not proposed. We have no issue with the parking along Route 3 right-of-way as proposed.
Yeah, so he's saying they're not gonna get into the state right away.
Okay.
Yeah. Correct?
Correct. That's right, you can't fill in stick
Anything else?
Yeah, question, Philip Nilsson, Tilton, trustee of United Methodist Church, Tilton Northfield. How would that affect our church property, or will it? Are we abutted to this?
Oh, you were on the first case.
You were on
Oh,
the first
That was
case.
the first
That
case.
was the first case.
That's a couple miles away from you.
Okay,
Yeah, that's,
okay,
So take it easy on me, will you?
all right,
But it's not,
I think the church owned a piece around here, but that was back in the 1800s.
yeah, yeah.
Before Lockmere Grange, it was a
It was in
Methodist.
Methodist church.
just quickly to answer your
That was
question, I don't see how their issue is going to in any way.
How'd it work out?
good.
They have-
They shouldn't be affecting you at all.
Oh,
Yeah. Good to see you, I haven't seen you in a long
Yes,
time.
yes,
Thank you.
Yeah, with that thought, I'll close it to the public comment and back to the board. To apologize for Maria there, she's involved with medical stuff, so she gets called away. It's usually something.
I'm good with it, you just move forward, you don't have to wait, it's fine, whatever you guys.
You don't want to wait for her?
It's up to you, if you'd like to wait for it, you can.
Unless,
I have no objection to moving forward, but it's your call. I'll support you whatever way you want to go.
okay, well, let's give her a couple more minutes. It's only 7:30 now. If she gets done, and I'd rather have her included because that makes a full board, but she
Give her a reason to be here too.
yes. We're waiting. I missed the first one. Why don't we take a little break and a little fresh air, smoke them if you got them.
Still back, same?
We'll reconvene this commission. Okay, we're now close to the public, back to the board. The board get any further discussion relative to this issue? It does appear that the proposed zoning, the retaining wall is a relatively small significance to the whole picture here. It does appear that it would definitely be something that it would be safer to have it there, not only that, but and to keep the driveway intact too. To keep people from going off the front. It's certainly not going to have any negative effect on the neighborhood. Anything, Mike?
That's fine. You need I don't really think I need to get involved in any other discussion. I mean, I tend to agree that if we're gonna allow parking and travel in these setback areas, that we've also got to consider necessary enhancements to the purpose of safety and erosion control, aesthetics, and all that, along with it. Because you just can't have vehicles trodden across bare ground
We're going into ditches,
or going into ditches,
especially in the wintertime.
and creating ruts and all sorts of erosion problems. It's a necessary evil at this point, to me, seems to me. So I would recommend that after considering everything involved, to me, in my mind, they've satisfied all 5 of the criteria needed for granting a variance, that we should go ahead and grant this the variance for this retaining wall as denoted in the appeal.
How about a motion to that effect?
I thought that's what I was doing.
No.
Sorry, I can't, don't make me do it over again. My headache. You too.
I don't have children, I have employees.
Yeah, did you get any of that, or
No, you kind of rambling.
is the tape on?
Yes.
Oh, Lord.
So in other words, what you're proposing, a motion to approve with reasons that you gave?
Correct,
Is that what you're saying?
yes. We put that in the form of a motion.
Okay, so in the form of a motion.
Second it.
And we now have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank you for your
That's
time.
resolved.
I will move forward with the wall.
Yes, you can go forward with the law, and hopefully the planning board will address these issues and the zoning this coming March.
Yeah, I'd like to be part of
I'm
that.
sure
actually.
it will be done the way
Well,
it's done.
No.
There's stuff to be done.
I hear they're already working on it.
Well, you're there at every other meeting, why not?
Thank you again, and have a good night.
Okay, take it easy.
Good night, folks.
Good night,
Let's
don't
go,
forget
John.
your jacket,
Okay, I already did.
your jacket.
One more week.
Yeah, look good on you.
John, that's your board there if you want it.
Oh, this is John's?
That black board is John's. You left it last time. Couldn't wait to get out of here.
Thanks for your assistance, Dan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good evening.
Thank you very much. Hope that foot feels better soon.
Dan, if you have any critique, it's the way we handle this tonight. Let me know.
We can talk, yeah.
Send us an email or something.
Yeah.
Any advice or anything would be greatly appreciated.
Night, thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good luck.
Sorry, I was
Appreciate it.
late for you.
Oh,
Oh, my gosh.
Motion to adjourn?
No, not yet.
No.
I have, I think I already mentioned it to everybody except Marina, proposed that our meeting, well, we're not gonna have any further meeting in October. But one in November, and we don't meet in December. And so it'll be November and January. I'd like to move it up to the third Monday rather than the third Tuesday of the month.
Do you have a problem with Mondays at all?
Why? What do you
Are they
want?
okay?
the third Monday,
make
I
any
thought, was the Conservation Commission.
Yes, it is.
The third Monday is. The Conservation, that's the only thing that meets on Monday nights. Why don't you make it the second Monday?
Unless we want to meet upstairs, we can meet
Yeah,
upstairs.
if you wanna meet
Well, you said that there
upstairs.
won't be a meeting in November anyways?
October.
October, this month, won't be another one this month.
Oh, no, nothing this month, okay. But-
I mean, we have two meeting places.
We
You
can
could
meet
have-
upstairs if you'd
Right.
like.
We could, if we had
Yeah.
to.
If you wanna leave it the third Monday.
Yeah, that would be the simplest thing, and you only have to slightly modify what
Right.
the
Just
thing has. If somebody comes in, you can just tell them there's been a little change.
Monday
Right.
in November and January, right?
Right, November and January. That ought to cover us.
Yeah, oh yeah, we'll be okay after that.
Okay, so everybody in favor of that? So what do you want now?
Well, I was just gonna say something when you were done.
When I'm done?
Yes.
We haven't got enough time.
Put
We'll
it
be here all night.
Put it in writing, will you?
This can't be good. She's
What do you
hanging
got?
around just to make a comment.
No,
No,
This
no, I
can't be
came
good.
with him, so I can't leave her talking. No, I just wanted to say the planning board is working on a section in the zoning for setbacks, what will and won't be permitted in the setbacks. You know, and the idea, it starts out, it's talking about the fact that the main purpose for setbacks is to have a green space or a buffer between properties.
Sure, yeah.
And that there are items, we have items that will be exempt, meaning they're allowed in regardless, and that would include sidewalks, things like that for people who would come in. I mean, most of the sidewalks that are in town are in this town or the state's right away, which the boards would have nothing to say about anyway. But there would be things like post office boxes, things like that, that we've listed. And steps, as long as they're not coming off the front of your house. You
Sure.
know, steps up into the
Yeah.
landscape, things like that.
Landscape type set.
So there will be things that will be exempt, there'll be some things that will be by special exception, like if they're going to have parking, especially in the front, anything that happens in the front setback would require an inspection by the code enforcement to make sure that the line of sight will not be disturbed, or interfered with.
Yeah, makes
So
sense, yeah.
something is being worked on, but, we have, and eventually we'll have public hearings about it, but we're just in the process now of, drafting some things, so.
I think setbacks are very important, especially
Yes.
in dense areas, where there's a lot of homes and businesses
Right.
together. And I know that there's a reason for that, because, people will do the damnedest things right up to their property line,
Right.
and just create an eyesore, create all kinds of issues. If you
Well,
don't have that.
We were
But these
even-
are usually
yeah.
above ground things,
Yes.
like you said, mailboxes, the crappy looking mailboxes,
Yeah.
things like that, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, something just to let the board know that I know you've heard a couple of cases now regarding
lines.
these, so that, we're also working on parking regulations for the zoning, so
Yeah, that's great. That's
hopefully
good
it
to
will
hear.
help you out.
So it'll be more inclusive,
Yes.
and I suppose that's necessary today, because, again, like Joe said earlier, years ago, we never had an issue with this kind of stuff, but now it's becoming more and more critical
Yep.
with construction waivers
Mhm.
to get all that in there.
Right.
But, I still say, like I said a minute ago, that if we're going to allow vehicular parking and travel in, like both of these cases tonight, in the setbacks, we have to also consider enhancements that go along with it. Because you just can't have them going over the natural terrain
Right.
forever. So, and I don't see a problem with, little sections of retaining walls to support the area that you're leveling,
Right. Well,
especially if it's done well.
yeah,
It's
well,
done.
as you saw from the minutes, the board did not have an issue with this.
No,
It's just that with all that's been going on, they did not have the authority
no.
to say yay or nay.
I think that was really great of you to speak on their behalf and give a recommendation like that. So those sort of things, it's good, nice to know that the board supported it, in general.
Well, that was to me another reason why I really didn't want to force appeal to administrative decision.
Right,
you know.
sure.
Right, it's just a general conversation. We can go ahead and adjourn the meeting at this point if you want to just adjourn.
So the meeting's adjourned?
Yeah, meeting adjourned.